Edward Snowden, the 29-year-old NSA contractor, is in Hong Kong. He's behind this massive NSA leak story. This is breaking news. With me is Alex Frangos, our Wall Street Journal reporter in Hong Kong. Welcome to Asia Today. I'm Mariko Sanchanta. Alex, this is pretty extraordinary that this man, we all woke up to find that Edward is in Hong Kong. Now, what do we know about this? I know we know it through The Guardian and The Washington Post. They've reported that he's here, but we haven't tracked him down yet. Why has he chosen Hong Kong? Do we know anything about that?
Well, what he's told The Guardian is that he thought that this would be a good place to be, that there's a free press and open political dissent, and he thinks that it's a place that would resist any urges by the U.S. government, I guess, to try to track him down or whatnot. It's unclear if that was a smart decision on his part. There is an extradition treaty between the U.S. and Hong Kong. Hong Kong has a separate system from mainland China, its own legal system, and it had struck this deal a while ago, and several people over the years have been extradited for different crimes and accusations by the U.S. government. But there is a little bit of an out in this extradition treaty where there's some issue that's of importance to the national security of China. Beijing can step in and say, no, we're not extraditing this person. Now, to be clear, there hasn't been a request for extradition. It's even unclear if there's an investigation on the part of the U.S., but that might be behind the reason for why Snowden has picked Hong Kong.
But China has never actually used this clause in the extradition treaty, has it? Or do we know of any cases where it has?
We're looking into that. We're not sure yet if they've ever done that. It doesn't appear that they have. But this clearly puts this case right in between Beijing and Washington. This is not going to be a Hong Kong, Washington thing. This will be very high diplomatic level. I mean, we just had this meeting between President Obama and President Xi where they were discussing all sorts of things about hacking and surveillance and this and that. So this obviously rises to the top of the list.
Of course. Do we know anything about where he might be in Hong Kong? There was a video on The Guardian this morning where he says he's staying just up the road from the CIA. Do we know about his whereabouts?
We don't know what hotel he's staying at. He said the article says he's been in the hotel for the last few weeks, ordering room service, has barely left his room, is putting pillows around the doors to prevent eavesdropping, and wearing a hood over his head when he's typing on his computer to prevent people from snooping. This is a guy who, according to these reports, is has worked in the U.S. intelligence community and for contractors and knows how this stuff works. And but now he's out. He's putting himself out in the public. So we're anxious to hear more about what he has to say.
And wouldn't the smartest thing for him to do is to just get out there more and tell his story? Would that act as some kind of protection for him?
Well, that seems to be what he's doing, is get his story out there and portray himself not as a criminal leaker, but as a whistleblower, someone who can be protected under certain statutes in U.S. law. And that's what Washington is dealing with right now, is whether to open an official investigation to go after him, criminally, or whether that risks the ire of the public, who are, very skeptical of these programs in the first place, and, worried that there's kind of a Big Brother thing going on. So the higher profile he gets, in some ways, the better protected he is.
And can you just give me some color? I mean, is there like a full-on manhunt for Ed Snowden in Hong Kong right now? Are there lots of reporters out there just camped out at hotels all over the place?
We don't know. I mean, we've called around different hotels. Some of the hotels, we say, is Edward Snowden there? And they say immediately no, because they've already gotten 5 calls from other reporters. The U.S. consulate has, declined to comment. They've referred calls to the Justice Department in the U.S. The Hong Kong police, the same thing. Saying, declining to comment. So, there's not like some sort of manhunt going on that we can tell, but certainly everyone's talking about it, and this will be the story of the day.
Right.
I think he feels content that the debate that he wanted to trigger about this massive worldwide surveillance state that is being created has been triggered. There is a worldwide debate about that as a result of our stories that he helped create or enable. And he feels like he has accomplished the mission that he set out to accomplish, and is gratified about that, honestly. I'm sure on some level he's anxious about what comes next, but this was a choice that he made, fully expecting that this is what was going to happen, and it's happening, and he's handling it well.
Is he fearful?
I mean, he's a human being. I'm sure he's fearful, but he's not like petrified with fear. I get the sense that he's very at peace with the choice that he made.
China's reining in a surge in credit, but risking a slowdown in growth with it. This is Asia Today. I'm Jake Lee. I'm joined by Bob Davis from Beijing. Bob, thanks so much for joining. We've had a whole slew of data from China, but you've been digging into these credit numbers, and we're seeing, well, something quite new, this sort of slowdown in credit at last. Talk us more through what's happening.
Well, China has been growing very rapidly, or China's credit has been growing very rapidly over the past year or so, leading to a lot of worries that China was getting into a very vulnerable situation. Its banks and other financial institutions. They've talked a lot, the officials have talked a lot about cracking down, but they actually haven't done much. But over the last month or two, you do see a substantial slowdown in lending.
Get it. A lot of people say, look, it's just being transferred from the sort of the official sources to the shadow world of banking. I mean, is that happening, or is this a proper crackdown, and we're finally seeing some success here by regulators?
Well, I mean, you know, the growth in lending has been in the shadow, the informal sector, and so the crackdown is mostly in that sector as well. Although traditional bank loans have been slower the past couple of months, and they have been as well.
Get it. So a lot of people say, look, if you're going to curb the lending, you're going to slow the growth, which I guess you don't want China to slow too much. You get so much problems, you know, coming with it, especially social problems. So how worried should we be? Is China going to sort of walk this tightrope of slowing lending but not slowing growth too much? Talk us through that.
I mean, it's quite a dilemma, actually. I mean, if they cut back on lending, that presumably bolsters their financial institutions or stops them from weakening any further. So that's a good thing. But if they cut back on lending, that also reduces the fuel that powers growth. So that's a bad thing. Yeah, it is quite a tightrope, and who knows whether they'll be able to manage it well.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Is there any sort of consensus or where we go from here? Does China want to cut lending even more? Is it now just about right? What's your sense?
I think they'll probably cut it some more the rest of the year. You know, the Chinese officials put up a brave front about not caring about whether growth is slowing or not, but that is just talk as far as I can see. Last year, when growth slowed to 7.4%, all of a sudden credit went zooming back up again. So I think we're at a point where we don't know what their bottom line is, but they clearly have one. And
Sure.
At some point, if it slows too much, that's a bigger problem than you know, some financial vulnerability a couple of years from now.
Get it. Bob Davis in Beijing, thank you so much for joining. Google is out buying again, this time preparing to spend $1 billion US on traffic app Waze. This is Asia Today. I'm Jake Lee, and I'm joined by Asia tech reporter Juro Osawa. Juro, thanks so much for joining. First off, tell us what is Waze and why does Google want it?
Right, Waze is a 5-year-old mobile mapping app, navigation app. And this area is really a key component of any mobile business today. And a lot of internet companies, as they shift more and more business, mobile becomes a lot more important to them. They're trying to get into that area. And Google already is a dominant player with Google Maps, but Waze has been in the news a lot lately,
Sure.
in the past few months, and we've heard about potential buyers, including Facebook, for example. We reported that they had been in talks as well.
Get it. So, I mean, in really simple terms, you've got Google, which was the big search engine, but now the big battleground is mobile, and the best thing on mobile really is these sort of mapping apps, right? That's what users want most of all.
Well, I think the location-based services, that element is going to be in many aspects of the mobile business, like social media being combined with location. So Google already does that with Google Maps and other services like YouTube or Google Plus, social media. So a lot of companies are trying to get into cover those different aspects of the mobile business.
Get it.
And one possible factor behind this is preventing Facebook or other rivals from really getting into that territory, basically, by this company before other people get to it.
Get it. I mean, we heard a lot of interest, yeah, from Facebook and others. We are in Hong Kong. What about here in Asia or around the world? I mean, these are sort of two US companies we're talking about here, but is mapping and mobile as big in Asia as it is in the US? Talk us through the global context of this.
So, in China, China also, the internet market there is huge. And similarly, a lot of internet companies in China are trying to make sure that their business will be strong when people, more people shift to mobile devices. And recently, Alibaba, one of the biggest internet companies in China, invested in a mapping app service in China called AutoNavi. And that's another example of how mobile, in the mobile-based internet business, this area of mapping is becoming really important.
Absolutely. It's a huge battleground, a lot of M&A, very exciting.
Chinese President Xi Jinping and U.S. President Obama had an unusually casual summit over the weekend. So after 8 hours of talk and one dinner and also 50 minutes of walk, what have they really achieved? Joining me now is Jeremy Page, Beijing correspondent for the Wall Street Journal. So Jeremy, what are the responses from both sides after the summit?
Well, both sides are really playing up the sort of personal rapport that Xi Jinping and Barack Obama managed to establish here. It was, as you say, a very sort of informal, unusually informal format for a meeting. They normally have sort of big formal gatherings with lots of officials. They have to spend a lot of time going through official talking points. This time, 8 hours of talks, a private dinner, a 50-minute walk in the grounds of this estate. And the images that emerged were of Xi Jinping and Barack Obama, in shirt sleeves and slacks, walking around, really trying to get to know each other. And so the message that's coming from both sides really is that they've laid a sort of good foundation of sort of personal relations between the two men, and they've also committed to more regular talks on a range of issues. And Xi Jinping invited Barack Obama to come to China for a similarly informal meeting in the future. And there was an acceptance of that invitation.
Right. So, but they haven't really set any time on when is that going to happen, right? Both leaders also are kind of under slightly challenging situations in their home country. Could you walk us through that and see whether they have done anything meaningful to throw their talks forward?
Well, there wasn't a whole lot of detail. As I said, both sides are sort of claiming to have established some sort of common ground and understanding, but they didn't really get into many details about sort of new ground that was broken on any of the core issues. The three big stumbling blocks between these countries at the moment: North Korea, cybersecurity, and China's maritime disputes in Asia. And the U.S. side did claim that there was, a little progress that was made on North Korea, with Tom Donilon, the national security advisor, suggesting that both leaders had agreed that North Korea should not be allowed to develop nuclear weapons. But that message wasn't really reflected in the statements from the Chinese side. So we're still trying to work out whether actually any progress was made on that front. Similar on cybersecurity, it looks like both sides really sort of stuck to their core positions, and we haven't got a sense of whether they're moving any closer together.
So how about the economic matters, issues like the value of the Chinese currency, and what the Chinese side wanted? For example, getting good treatment from the U.S. on investing for the Chinese to invest in America. Is that all these details going to be waited until the next strategic dialogue between the two sides to be ironed out?
Yes, I think the details are all going to be ironed out at that next round of talks coming up in July. The Chinese did raise their concerns about access to the U.S. market during the meetings, but the economic discussions, which happened on Saturday morning, were very much dominated by cybersecurity. It was interesting that the U.S. decided to raise that issue in the context of economic talks rather than the security segment, which those discussions happened on the Friday night. So Barack Obama was really focusing on cyber theft of hacking attacks on U.S. companies, specifically to target their proprietary technology. That really dominated the economic discussions, and the U.S. side made it clear that this issue is at the center of the relationship. So when we're looking forward to the dialogue in July, I think that issue is also going to dominate those talks.
Okay, so stay tuned for the next SCD in Washington in July. Thank you very much, Jeremy. This is Wei Gu for the Wall Street Journal.